Hey folks, thanks so much for being here. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up. What you're listening to is an episode from VJ Talks, my podcast. And this is a re-upload, so if you hear anything about, hey, go check out this link, go check out this forum, etc., it's more than likely not there anymore. So just wanted to give you that heads up before you went looking for something that wasn't there. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Please enjoy, and let me know what you think in the comments. Catch you later. Hello and welcome to VJ Talks, a bi-monthly podcast presented by VJH Creations LLC, where I talk about anything and everything to do with TTRPGs and sometimes larger pop culture. I want to give a quick shout out to Arcane Anthems providing the intro and outro music you hear in this podcast. Arcane Anthems creates free music for tabletop role-playing campaign streams and podcasts. Music adds immersion, tension, and emotion to role-playing games, but often streams and podcasts shy away from using music for fear of legal ramifications. Arcane Anthems wants to make it simple to add music to your games. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to VJ Talks. I really appreciate you tuning in. Moving forward, there's going to be this short segment in front of every episode and a break later on in the episode. Just want to let y'all know where else you can support me and talk about something interesting happening in the TTRPG space. I'm a freelance game designer. You can find all my products and where to buy them on my website, vjhcreations.com/products. I'm most well known for An Elf in the North Had a Little Baby, Volumes 1 and 2, and Those Who Wander. I've also got a Ko-fi, VJH Creations, if you want to send me a few bucks, and I'm launching a Patreon on the 1st of June. There's 5 tiers, $1, $5, $10, $15, and $30 with a variety of benefits, so check it out next week when it launches. I'm also going to start GMing over on startplaying.games. Patrons of my Patreon can get discounts for their first session. Also, make sure you're checking out my TikTok, VJH Creations. I post 3 to 4 times or more per week. A lot of the times I've talked about a podcast episode topic on my TikToks first. Enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, welcome to VJ Talks. It's me, VJ Harris, your host, and today we are going to be talking about the economy in DnD, and I am here with an amazing guest.
Hello, I'm Professor Norman Maynard at the College of Charleston. I'm a professor of economics.
Yes, you heard it here. I have a whole ass economic expert to talk about this. So just to get started, how do you define an economy in your own words as an educator?
Ooh, let's start with the little questions, right?
Okay. If let's say this is a level 100 class and I'm getting in there, how and you're writing a 100 level textbook, how do you define the economy? Like the first page or paragraph of like the intro to economics kind of thing.
So the thing that I try to get across, I don't know if this is a strict definition, but the thing that I try to get across about what the economy is that the economy is just people interacting. It's just exchanges, right? When we talk about the economy, we're ultimately talking about people who have things, goods, services, abilities, whatever it might be, trading with other people. That's it. That's what an economy is. It's just humans trading. The sort of scope of, for example, when we're talking about big things like, inflation is in the news, right? When we talk about inflation, how is there inflation in the economy? Then we have to talk about, well, which trades, which people, what's the scope of this? And you can look at that at many different levels. But at its core, having an economy just means that you have people who are engaging in exchange.
Okay, a pretty simple concept. Like, I understand it, and I feel like I might have mentioned this a lot. Hate math, bad at I couldn't do what you do, despite trying to model an economy in the game, a functioning one. And okay, so based off what you just said, it's obvious that there is an actual economy in every D&D game, regardless if it's based on coin, barter, magical ability, or some other things, because people are just trading in and out of things. So I think, question, can an economy be broken? And is the one in D&D broken in the sense of prices and how things don't fluctuate, as far as in base 5e, a longsword is always going to be, I don't know, this is not the actual price of a longsword, but 20 gold, even if I go to a mountainous region that has no iron or steel or whatever.
So can an economy be broken? Just taking that question, sure. What does it mean for an economy in a game to be broken, I think is the thing that we have to think about. And for example, when was the last time in a fantasy game, for example, you as a player took the time to describe your character sharpening your sword?
Never. I've never done that, and I have characters that would do it.
Right, there are things that your character is implicitly doing all the time, but it's not part of the gameplay. It's not part of the experience that you're trying to capture, in the same way that, you know, like every dramatic TV show, like, never shows anyone using the bathroom. Right?
Unless they're supposed to die on the toilet or something.
Right. Oh, yes, of course. But like, this was a joke when the TV show 24 was on. They're like, this is supposed to be following, like, in real time. When is anyone going to the bathroom? And the answer is, that's not part of the story you're telling. That's not part of the drama that you're depicting. In the case of a tabletop RPG, that's not part of the gameplay experience. So it's not broken to exclude a thing that is not intended to be part of the gameplay experience. When it becomes broken is when the design of the economy, the design of how these interactions take place, begins to contradict or make it more difficult to play the game the way you want to play it. And that's true both for the players who we call players and the players who we call game masters.
I like the players game masters, because like game masters are players, and I feel like people forget that sometimes. Even other like game masters,
like 90% of world building, in my experience at least, is pretty much for me as the game master. It's not from my players are not necessarily ever going to interact with a lot of stuff that I still want to build, because that's part of my gameplay experience.
So would you say, like, going on to your, like, it's not broken to, it's only broken if it like interrupts what you're actually trying to do for the story. So would you say, like, say you have the example of you are a part of, like, you're not, there are two warring nations, and one of the nations is warring with the other because they have a the other nation has a high stockpile of iron, gold, whatever material that they need. However, and like there's shortages. There's supposed to be shortages in this other kingdom that's attacking the one that has all the stock stuff, but the cost of weapons, armors, and stuff hasn't changed. And the cost hasn't changed and the supply hasn't changed since pre-shortage. Like, that's where it becomes broken, and it's something like, oh, this is actually, like, wait a second, how is that there? Like, that's an example of it actually being the economy being broken in a way that it affects the game and you need to address.
Yeah, that's something that would definitely bother me as the game master running it. And I suspect, because I have pretty astute players, I suspect they would start to notice. They'd say, wait a minute, if there's a shortage in one place but not the other, but I can buy iron for the same price in either place, is there a shortage? Right? Like, if the shortage exists only in the sense that I, the game master, tell you, yeah, that's what's happening and that's the motivation, but they never see it and they never experience in it, then it does sort of like break the experience of playing the game, I think.
Yeah, no, I can totally agree with that. Okay, so I understand that your perspective is going to be different from most players since you have a PhD in the topic. But do you feel like outside of a situation like that, so that is a very clear situation where the economy of the world is important to maybe the central tension or the B plot of the story. Who knows what, like, where the war fits into that. But do you feel like you'd let's say that the economy is not like actually you're not given an example. It's not like breaking it if you don't actually build it out in a way that makes sense. But do you feel like if it was built out in a way where it's like, like you and I had a short conversation the last time we tried to record this and had to reschedule, and I was like, oh, I really want to make like a spreadsheet where like if you go to like it has all of the cost of things and it has on site each other, like, oh, this is how much they would sell it for, this is how much they would buy it for, but also here's how you can like shift, like maybe they sell it for 20% more or 30% less or something like that. Do you feel like it would enrich gameplay for you? Like if we went to, so let's say you're in Kingdom A and then you guys travel all the way to Kingdom B, which does have less iron, but not because like there's a shortage, it's just a regional thing, and they like trade things in, that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, hey, this is actually going to be slightly more expensive because of a lack of materials and how much it costs to travel things in. Like, does that kind of, I guess, does that verisimilitude of things, like, does it feel like it would enrich for you if it's like if it's a thing that happens in a variety of places, so it's like it consistently happens in different ways and things?
I think it certainly can. I think it also could be the kind of thing that it could be one of those things that as a game master we build and we're like, this is very cool, and then the players just miss it, they don't even notice, which is kind of frustrating. But for example, the one of the games that I run regularly, we started out with them as essentially the muscle for a smuggler who has an airship. And so they were going between different countries. And part of the story there was, what is it that we're trying to take to these different places? What is it that they're missing over in the city of Orlane, for example, that, they might be able to pick up in the city of Restonford. And so that was some stuff that I built out. I tried to build out just enough that it would motivate, that it would make sense, and that the players would say, oh, this is a real thing that's happening. It would feel real to them. So I would say in that kind of a campaign, especially, like if you're running a smuggler game, whether it's DnD or Star Wars or whatever it is, make stuff cost different things in the places you're smuggling between them, because that will make it make sense. That will give the players a motivation to do the smuggling in some sense.
And so it's safe to assume that your players like noticed that and enjoyed that aspect of it while they were doing the smuggling, or was it one of those examples where the players were just like, oh, or didn't like pick up like those differences between the two and what that meant for like the world building?
I think they picked up on it enough that it made what was happening feel more real to them. I think that if I had tried to push it much further than that, I think they would have bounced off of it. Because at the end of the day, we were playing D&D, and what they want to do is to use their cool abilities to, fight monsters and uncover mysteries and those sorts of things were sort of the main mode of gameplay. So I was building out enough to get them to go from one place to another.
So 2 questions from what you just said. 1, how would you have built that out further? Like, what would that have looked like for you? And 2, what in your like on the idea of building an economy and then also having it tie into what the players might actually want to do, which is, like you said, fight monsters, use their cool abilities. How would you tie in their actions into like fleshing out the economy and having it have like repercussions? Or God, repercussions always sounds so negative. But like I mean it in like in a positive or negative way kind of thing. Like we've all heard like the horror stories of, I gave my players 1,500 gold and they spent all of it in a small town, probably crashing the economy, but nobody ever like goes further with that.
So the 2 questions there. The first one, how would I have built it out? It depends, right? I mean, trying to make an economy. I mean, when we're building an economy in a game, what we're really doing is building a model. Now, when I build a model for academic purposes, there's usually a lot of math because I need to keep track of very fiddly things. There's, calculus involved because I want to describe people choosing their optimal selection from what's available. I probably wouldn't go that direction for game purposes because it gets needlessly complicated. It's a lot of pieces that don't necessarily need to be in there. But what I might have done, for example, is I could go into more detail about thinking about why is something more expensive here than it is over there, and what could change that would cause those to shift, right? For example, if they are bringing in, if they're bringing in iron to an area that is short on iron, if they do that enough, then how much does that adjust prices and cause prices to equalize out? We have this theorem in economics called the law of one price, that if you have perfectly competitive markets, which is a big if, and you have free mobility of goods and people and things like that between places, then if those prices start out different, they should equalize. Right, up to whatever the cost is of moving things between one and the other. Right, because anytime there's a difference, there's an opportunity for someone, again, maybe the players, to profit off of that price difference. But by profiting off the price difference, you reduce the price difference. So you could build something like that in where essentially they find this very lucrative opportunity, but the more they exploit it, it starts to go away. So they have to start to look for something else.
Yeah, like for a second, my brain was like, "What?" Because like they're sending it off to another place, therefore increasing the supply, which then lowers the costs to even out each other. Because we can get this isn't scarce anymore. So for okay, that makes sense.
And at the same time, they're increasing. See, you're the one who started bringing up you brought up the supply word, so I'll bring in the other half. They're also increasing demand in the place where the iron is cheap, right? Because they're buying up the iron to take it over here, which drives the price up. So the price starts to go up where it was cheap. The price starts to go down where it was expensive,
and then it levels.
And then it's gonna start to equalize again up to the cost and the risk and sort of whatever might be involved in getting it from one to the other. So that opportunity of arbitrage opportunity essentially goes away over time. Now there are lots of things that can, in the real world, that can throw a monkey wrench in that. But for the purposes of a game model, that's kind of a nice thing that you can introduce to cause the game to evolve over time. Say, yeah, you are transporting iron across the border, but you're not going to keep doing that forever. You have to think of something new.
And just to go back for a second for anybody that is unclear, an arbitrage opportunity is the simultaneous purchase and sale of an asset in different markets to exploit tiny differences in their prices. Accurate definition?
Well, it doesn't have to be tiny differences.
Any difference, really.
Any difference in price, right? Arbitrage is literally what we've just been describing, right? If the price is low in one place and the price is high in another place, one market versus another market, by moving the good from one to the other, you can essentially get that price difference and keep it for yourself for free. But if you are doing that a lot, then that price difference shrinks and the arbitrage opportunity goes away.
So what I'm hearing is you should actually have a few places where you could have an arbitrage opportunity and exploit them all in small ways, so you can keep doing it and don't have to worry about your main source of income doing the doing the like evening out and you losing out on your profits.
Are we talking about game advice or financial advice? Because I should clarify. Nothing that I say is good financial advice.
I'm talking about in the game. I'm saying if my players or myself as a player were trying to game the economy, as it were, like let's find multiple things where this is at and let's start smuggling around there, because then we'll have a plethora of arbitrage opportunities.
Right. I mean, and that may be something that the players learn through having that go away a couple of times, and maybe something that they're planning on. But another sort of game opportunity that this introduces is, if there is this arbitrage opportunity, if there is this price difference that you are making sure you're getting some benefit from, but you're not doing enough to equalize those prices, maybe someone else is. Right? It's a great opportunity. Like, if you'd have to presume that your party is not the only one to notice, hey, there's a chance to make some money here, and so now maybe it's a great time to introduce a rival party.
And they're doing the same thing and then driving the profits down for the
now you've got we're moving into Acquisitions Incorporated territory at this point, where it's like, oh, we've got the rival corporation.
Exactly. And then my second question, just to reiterate, was how would you tie in the wants of the players, like, and wanting to use their abilities, killing monsters and stuff, to like expanding the economy and making it something that has repercussions, and actually like tying them to it so they care? Like I recall in this one game, I really wanted to be like, oh, you brought back 100,000 gold pieces. You have fucked the economy royally. What are we gonna do about it? But then I was like, I don't actually know how to make that interesting. I don't know what to do with that.
So the way to make it interesting, to some extent, I should clarify that the way to make it interesting depends a lot on who your players are and what it is that they want to do. So it always comes back to listening to your players. But usually the interesting things that you can generate, again, because an economy is about exchanges between people, the interesting part about that is going to be the people, right? So you want to think about who is involved here, who is, benefiting from this, who is being made worse off from this. Those people have motivations now to do things and make changes that your players have to react to. So that's how I would, for example, frame it. Now I can say that what I have done, and my players didn't really go this direction, but I talked to them about this recently. Their campaign started off basically at the end of a war, where these two countries had been at war. They're still not friends, obviously, but they were renegotiating their borders. And part of that renegotiation, which the party helped facilitate and helped make sure that actually worked so that they didn't go back into war, involved the transfer of a gold mine that was newly discovered to one of the countries. And then the party kind of, once they negotiated, they're like, yeah, you guys will get this section of land, you'll get the gold mine, and then...
Hello?
Aaron!
I'm so fucking sorry. I went and Googled the time, right? I'm like, okay, they said this time, so I Googled to Central, and it was like 12:30, and I was like, okay, I'll set an alarm for 11. And I fucking played myself.
Hey everybody. So we originally planned to have 2 guests on here, but all of us are in different time zones and conversion to stuff is hard. So, quick little intro. Aaron, if you'd like to if you listen to the podcast all the way through, before this, y'all have actually heard me have like a shooting the shit episode with Aaron before. But Aaron, if you would like to introduce yourself real quick, and then we will take a short break. Stop the recording and get Aaron caught up so we can keep talking.
And again, I am so fucking sorry. I work nights and I just got done with 12-hour. My name is Aaron. I am a security guard and all around kind of just interested in everything. I do TikTok. I'm setting up to do YouTube and other things. But for the most part, what I normally do is research a lot of crap and then throw it into DnD. So when it came to econ, I went out and bought an Econ for Dummies book and then proceeded to have a mental breakdown because I was reading it while on like 3 days no sleep. So I made it all of 2 chapters into that book, tossed it aside and said, I'm going to YouTube videos on economy. And realized it's everything.
It is.
It's everything. And I'm just so happy because that made it so much easier to understand than even the Econ for Dummies book.
And we'll be right back, folks. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, on Tuesday, June 31st at 6 p.m. ET, Connie Chang, pronouns they, he, she, the amazing DM from Transplanar RPG, is going to be hosting a Q&A discussing how to build fantasy worlds beyond Orientalist, colonialist, and racist frameworks of some races must be evil. Connie is an amazing DM and a fountain of knowledge. If you're listening to this podcast, it means you want to learn how to create worlds beyond those issues. This is a must-see stream. Also, check out all the content on Transplanar in general. I'm about to start a rewatch from the beginning since I fell off for a while and need a refresher. There's no time like the present to start watching. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for bearing with us with that short break and little ad that you heard for the first time. And so just to recap what was being said before the break, I had asked, how do you tie in the characters who want to use their abilities and kill monsters into the economy and make them care about it? And Norman rightfully mentioned, make it about the NPCs and their reactions to things. So for example, if the players show up in a small town and flood it with 15,000 gold pieces, maybe little Johnny is swearing vengeance on the entire party because that influx of gold somehow ruined his father's life. Like, who knows what that reasoning is? Hopefully we can talk a little bit more about what that could mean and why that might ruin something. But Aaron, I think you have more to say about making it about the people.
Yeah, so again, I threw myself into a lot of textbook material and basically came out with 2 thoughts. 1, the economy is a living, breathing thing that is a representation of the needs and wants of the people. And 2, D&D is the exact same thing. D&D is a representation of what the players want and the DM wants, and it represents itself through the actions everyone makes and reactions. When you take that into account, okay, the idea of little Johnny getting mad about his dad, okay, the only non-realistic thing I would say is take into account the player's intent. Because in real life, intent doesn't mean squat. You drop 500 gold in a city, all right, you're gonna see that city either blossom or crash and burn because of that influx, okay? Because they don't have the gold standard in reality. I mean, technically, artificially, everything has a gold standard in D&D in the aspect of everything has the same value, okay?
Well, we can get into the D&D money at some point if you want, because it's
we are going to get into that.
Yeah,
we are totally going to talk about
it. It is a hot fucking mess, and it's the most basic thing you would have to homebrew in all reality for a active economy representation. I had talked about briefly in our talking shit video or shit talk video or shitty talk, shooting the shit video. Okay, yeah. Shitty bang bang video. We had talked about what I call light versus heavy economy when I play D&D. A light economy is basically there is no economy to there's a little bit that's where you buy stuff and sell stuff. The heavy economy is when you start homebrewing. Yeah, this country is pissed at this country for iron sales because this country is the only one that can get iron. Okay, and that's like the bare minimal, like most basic version of a deeper economy. I still have my notes from work on the bottom of my head. Jesus Christ. But you have the idea that you can easily create a want and need in the game, and like you said, the players have to be tied into it. And it is easy to make it people because it's what people want and what people don't want. Econ technically exists without people because animals have wants and needs and need to trade those things as well. But we are sentient and sapient, therefore we have the observation and the wisdom to realize these things. Yeah, that's right. Your life lesson today is that humans and animals are only different because we have the ability to regret our past. I am also God, I'm so tired. I'm sorry.
No worries. No worries.
My brain is still kind of shaking. I'm trying to put it back together. But long story short, what I'm trying to say is that the economy, like you guys said, is there. But the intent of the player is the only real thing I would take into account. And even then, I'm the type of person that takes every opportunity for trauma to be a forefront thing for my players. So maybe Dad had a gambling problem. I don't know. You gave him 500 gold and he decided to blow it.
Oh.
You know, if you're trying to create a world where economy has an effect, that means taking NPCs and making them a bit more than 2D scratches on the field.
I'd actually like to jump in and follow up with that because I think that's a really good example of, because we talk about, and we always use this example, if the players show up with all of this money, all of this gold, then that might crash the economy. But it's not always obvious how something like that would happen. But I think that's a really good example, is that, yeah, if you show up with all this money and if someone finds themselves in possession of a bunch of round discs made of a rare metal, and they then think that they're rich, and therefore they start to gamble, they start to make all kinds of decisions. But again, bringing in pieces of metal doesn't grow any new food. It doesn't build any new housing.
It's the value we put in it.
Exactly. So it's when you show up with all this stuff and then people think, oh, because I have this money, because I have this gold, I now am rich. And then they start to make decisions
as if the
money was the stuff they actually want. Right? As if they had that. Then people start to make really destructive decisions. And that's how you end up with this crashing this little village, and little Timmy's like, no, you ruined it because you turned my dad into a drunk and a fiend.
And another way to use that is not even gold, resources. If you really want to get back into the idea of the bread mechanic that you were talking about, you sent us a book, which I did skim, a PDF about bread and its value. The whole thing is, it eventually gets to money, but the value it's talking about isn't money until the end of the process. How much is milk worth? How much is water worth? How much is wheat worth? Okay, and to a village that is a farm, okay, maybe you come in and you accidentally burn down the hay that they used to feed the cattle. Okay, now that cattle will die off before winter. They'll have to either slaughter them early, which means they're not going to get the meat, or you have to go ahead and buy new resources, feed them. And you can work that in, and that's a little more detail than you have to give the players. You could say you burnt down his wheat and his hay. His cattle died and he wasn't able to sell it before winter. That is economy 101. He has a resource and a shortage because you came in tra-la-la-la-ing yourself through death. And so you end up with the same end with a little bit more creativity, because it's easy to say your players drop 500 gold, because my players drop gold all the time. In fact, I had a character, Brog, who was a barbarian wizard with like an 18 intelligence. And I told you how I actually made a contract that I showed my DM. I actually wrote up a contract. I wrote up a 10-year plan for a bar in a fictional universe. And I didn't own the bar because my character was an orc, okay? And he was like, I know there are racist bastards in this world, and I am not about to put my name on your bar because it will cost you not to sell things.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a bunch of money because my DM accidentally gave us a bunch of money and broke his system and tried to fix it by multiplying the money. And I was like, I want to point out that my character literally has a loincloth, glasses, a shaving kit, and his weapon. I sold everything else. You sure you want to multiply what I have right now? And I ended up with something around borderline $1 trillion in USD if I converted it, because I did have to convert it. Because I had to understand how much a bar would function in the world of D&D. So I took gold, found out what it meant in USD, so on and so forth. Yeah, so I'm the type of person that does throw money at NPCs because my character usually ends up filthy rich because most of my characters are very frugal. And I think that just stems from me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I am the person that wouldn't destroy your economy, but I'm also the person who sat there and said, how can I not destroy this economy and instead, for the next 10 fictional years, make up some money back off this bar?
I think so. I love all of the examples we've been given about like how an economy can like how an influx of money can ruin a city and then turn it into like a small town, and then the NPCs are coming back and instigating stuff with the players. I guess my next question is, how do you make it something that's booming? Like there's two sides to that coin, right? Like it's either makes it or breaks it. Like you were mentioning, Norman, you mentioned gold is not food, it's not buildings, it's not infrastructure, but it can convert into that. So what, like if I'm the DM and I give my players 15,000 gold and they drop it into this small town, what do I need to do so that it's realistic that it didn't just break that economy like the ways you were mentioning, and instead it turned it into a flourishing, growing metropolis? Like I understand that could still be a problem because even if they have the 15,000 gold and they build up, the resources around them might not be able to sustain that and it could still collapse. But like just talking about in the, let's say there is growth stage.
So, I mean, in something like this, we can think about the effects of increases in money in the real world, in historical examples. And what we always see, and this comes up a lot, this has been a major topic of discussion in the last couple of years, right? And what it comes down to is, if you introduce more money in an environment where you're already using all of your resources pretty much at their highest sustainable level, the money is not going to result in any more stuff getting made. It's not going to result in any more services being provided. All it's going to do is drive up prices. And we've seen some of that very recently. But prior to that, right, we experienced this as well. When your land isn't all being cultivated, when your people aren't all being employed, when you have what we would call in economics, what we might call excess capacity, an influx of money can put those resources to work.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that at the beginning of the pandemic as well, right? A lot of people suddenly, they have no income, they can't pay for things, they get a check, and now they can pay their rent. Now they can buy food, and the people who make the food now have an income, so they can keep making the food. It activates the use of those resources. Mm-hmm. So if you want to say that the party comes in with a bunch of money and they're going to spend it, if they show up in a place where there are people who are not working, right? If you have a local recession or something like that, then the party showing up with money could be just what it needs to get people on their feet, to get people actively producing, to get people making the stuff that other people want. And so you can produce this kind of growth and recovery from the party showing up and saying, look, have some dragon gold.
There's also some other ways to take this. We have examples also, and I remember specifically being in college and my teacher talking about this. When you have a world that has met its needs, and then you give excess, there's also the opportunity for leisure. Okay. We go back to traditional Middle Ages where people are like, well, people in the Middle Ages worked less than we did. No. Their yearly schedule was different, because when they had to pull wheat, they pull wheat. When they had to sow, they sowed. When they had to go out and fix the fences, they went out and fixed fences. And then on their off seasons, they would throw festivals, the solstices, celebrations for making it this far. Okay. And so an excess of money could lead to a small village developing fine arts. Maybe they start looking into literature. It gives the ability for the little farm boy who has a natural intelligence to start looking at wizardry books, you know? And so one of the things to say is that, again, it's people, so the intent matters of these characters. I would say that the easiest way to go from destroying a city to building the city is who gets the money. Okay. Is it someone who can be responsible with those funds? Say your characters have a NPC that they absolutely love. He's this guy who's, I'll throw an example. He's a grizzled old farmer who has a weird form of intellect, but it's the equivalent of a redneck mentality. If tape don't fix it, JB Weld will. All right. And they decide, we like this guy, we're going to give him all the money. Well, he lives a simple life his entire life. He's 45 years old, and he has no intent of wasting the money or do anything with it. So he decides to slowly give it out to people over the next few years. He doesn't know what to do with 3,000 gold. So, oh, this kid needs a lunch. Here's a gold. This old lady needs her fence fixed, but her grandson's sick. Here's 5, 10, 15 gold. You know, so on and so forth. So the intent of the character can have a big point. Maybe the character you give the money to, you come back and they're a paragon of the city that you've now helped build. You know, the economy is people and what they want and what they feel they need. So the idea that if you really want to be nice and have the city bloom and not have it implode and a lich take over, I suppose you could have good people in your town.
I feel like we jumped to an extreme in that example. A lich take that feels personal, but
look,
but no.
It's DnD. Extremes are a norm.
I would have went with a dragon, but you know what? I respect the lich. Or what are those things? Morkoths or whatever that like love treasure, steal stuff from people, make a weird dreamscape. But okay, so
there's a campaign in this somewhere.
Okay, so
I mean, we've described about 5 different campaigns so far.
We truly have.
Feel
Honestly,
free to take these ideas.
I'm in favor of little Tommy training in levels of rogue and like wizard to be the best assassin and going after the players one by one after they've defeated a big bad and now they got to get together to figure out what happened, kind of thing. But so just to summarize, the answer is the people. You tie the people's reactions to what the players are doing, which is really just the answer to like D&D in general for everything, really, regardless of what you're doing. And okay,
sorry, there was one other example, one other sort of dimension to that answer that I didn't throw out there that I just want to throw out real quick. Because if we're looking for ways to tie the stuff that players want to be doing, right? Fighting monsters, going to the wilderness, dungeon delving, those things, tie that to a more detailed economy. One obvious answer, and VJ, I know you know this. Monster parts.
Hey!
Right? Monster parts can be an essential component of the... I mean, if you live in a world where there are people who can do magic... I mean, we live in a world where people can do magic, right? In real life. Like, do you know how like the electricity gets supplied through your walls.
I
It
know
gets generated-
everything, so yes.
Well, you know everything, sure. But like for our listeners, right? Most of the stuff we interact with on a daily basis, we have some vague sense, but like we wouldn't be able to do it, right? Like I could not generate electricity and provide it to my house. So what do people do? They need some stuff that I don't need. I don't know why they need it, but they need that stuff. They need their monster parts. I can get the monster parts. And now we've got exchange. Now we've got an economy.
Yep. It's the same thing with the food and the wheat. You know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And VJ and I were talking about his article in Arcadia about the monster components for spells, which I absolutely love.
Don't have any monetary value on them because I was like, there's no way for me to do this in a functional manner without building out, without fixing the things that I think are broken. So
I completely agree with that. That was something that was sitting in the back of my mind. The idea that the dragon's tooth that your character wanted to keep as a trinket, it has some sort of value to someone. And it's real easy to introduce that. Just have them run across a wizard or alchemist and be like, wait, you have actual like blood of a what is it? It's the one that won't troll. You have troll's blood? You have troll's blood.
Regeneration properties. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we use that to make potions here. You use troll's bloods. And that's also going to get a reaction from your players. They've been drinking troll's blood this whole time and they don't know.
Healing potions. Duh.
And that would also make healing potions really expensive and explain why they're 50 freaking gold.
Well, they're 20. The base one is 25 now. Apparently, like we were a little bit off on that. However, that is still a lot of money for a skilled and unskilled worker. So.
I mean, you did a breakdown, and here's the thing. I have been watching every one of your podcasts, including your 2-minute There's No Video videos. So I enjoy those the most because it's like I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm gonna watch a podcast, and it's all about numbers. I literally, okay, I'm gonna be real. Your podcasts are Numbers, the album, and I love it. Because I'm a very literal person. I love converting things, but the idea that you can grow your world through simple exchanges like that make me extremely happy. The idea of troll's blood being an item where trolls in the book are explained to be unnatural. Like the go-to word for trolls is unnatural. Wizards don't know where they came from. The abyss doesn't know where they come from. They just kind of exist. And the idea that they are the main ingredient for potions, one, explains their costs, okay? 2, it allows for your players to be like, okay, do we want to go troll hunting? Which, as a DM, makes me laugh because no, I would never want to hunt a troll in my life. Variant troll is my default troll, and so troll head trying to bite my ankles while the arm is trying to strangle me is terrifying. But yeah, the idea that like monster parts can become a part of your campaign and a good part of the economy, at that point, you don't even need to worry about money at that point. You can trade in favors and it still holds weight, and it can still affect the town because all of a sudden they have a rare resource that your players are now over encumbering the town with. Like how does the town change when there's so many health potions that the average Joe can afford it? You know, the inflation of the prices drops. It deflates to maybe they're 10 to 15 gold. That's still a huge cut in cost. Maybe a company now develops to work in trade. Hey, we sell discounted health potions to make up basically how we do like the we buy like my wife's wedding ring. She chose a specific wedding ring she really liked, and she found it on an ad from Wish because Wish bought up thousands of rings that were not sold for a discounted price and sold it for $20-$30. My wife's wedding ring was only $20-$30. Okay, and she loves that ring. Okay, that's the only thing that matters to me. Let me put that out there. Anybody who makes a comment, he only spent 20. My wife wanted that ring, and I got her that ring.
Exactly. That's all that actually matters in that situation. You tell me what you want, and I get it.
Yeah. Econ is people, but imagine that for a health potion. Rings cost thousands of dollars, and I got it for 20. Now take that difference in price, apply it to a health potion, and watch what happens to the city. Suddenly, everyone who gets hurt in a work accident can get healed.
Yeah, that. Oof. Okay. All right. Okay. Yes. Head gears turning.
It always eventually comes back to the real fantasy. You now get to be play a character who can own property, and you get hurt at work, you get healed. And
the real
confidence worth it. Oh my god.
The real fantasy. So okay. So there are two more like parts of this conversation I would like to have. If we don't finish it, obviously we can come back and talk about it some more, and schedule that later down the line. But so the two parts I would like us to talk about is, one, the actual coinage in D&D, like prices and whatnot. I know our listeners can't see anybody's face, but Aaron's face, yes, is what I'm guessing.
That's the optimal representation of my face.
And so the coinage, and then so Aaron, the day that we had to reschedule, because we had to reschedule this before, me and Norman talked for a little bit, because super excited to talk about the economy, and I mentioned why I was reading the price of bread, because I was like, oh, this can help me figure out a baseline for building out my own economy, so that I can make all of the prices make sense and that kind of thing. And Norman brought up, I think you mentioned that I was basing mine off of bread, and you saw one that was basing it off of like how much the regular worker and whatnot on Reddit would have made and whatnot. So I'd like us to talk about like, what baseline would you set to start building out your economy? And aside addendum to that, how do magic items fit into that? Because it's one thing to talk about mundane stuff.
Oh,
it's another to add actual magical things. So first part, coinage. And before I want to say right off the bat that in my games I always switch to the silver standard. So everything that's in gold is now silver, everything that's in silver is now copper, and everything that was in copper just stays at copper. Like, no reason for me to make like another underneath that, because it defeats the purpose. And then some specific things I do put as gold prices, like if I want a chest plate to be actually expensive, it might be 25 gold, 50 gold, that kind of thing. And it's to make gold and platinum feel like it's like actually interesting when you find it, and to make silver and copper still have a place in the world. But yeah, coinage.
Okay, so as someone who has converted on both the idea of items and work cost, and I think the best way for me is working costs, because I already do that every day with my job. I know how much I'm paid by the minute at my job, so that is a motivator for me to not be 5 minutes late, because when you only make $13 an hour, that means that every 30 minutes you're making roughly $6.50. Break that down to every 5 minutes, you're making $1 and some change, and work it down to every second, so on and so forth. When it comes to coinage, D&D coinage is broken. It's just broken because they work on increments of 10, and that is not a natural progression of funds, especially when D&D uses gold as its default. I will say Electrum helps with this, but nobody wants to use Electrum. And the reason I say Electrum helps is because it's essentially, it's a half rather than a tenth. And when you do the silver standard, you could have Electrum, then gold. And I mean, you have gold, Electrum, silver, and copper. Therefore, you don't have an overbearing list of copper items. But what I do is I looked at the cost of living per group, 2 copper, 2 silver, 2 gold, and I said, let's convert those to real funds. Okay. take this as you will. I don't believe there is a middle class. There's either you got what you need and you have excess, or you don't got what you need and you're struggling. I am in the don't got. So but again, this is the fantasy. A middle class obviously exists in the fantasy, because you're not so wealthy that you become obsessed with wealth, but you're making your needs and able to save. So the average cost of living in San Antonio is like $25 to $30. I don't make that. But it's $25 to $30, and if the average cost of a middle class in DnD is 2 copper, that means that translates, if I really want to make it clean, $30 to 2 copper. Okay, per day. Okay, of living. So if I say that the average person spends $100 a day, and this is arbitrary, there's no science behind it, but it's arbitrary. If an average person spends $100 a day, that means $100 translates to 2 copper, which is $50 per copper. Okay. Then we take that and we say, okay, now let's apply that to D&D economy. Magic items ruin this. They ruin it. But you apply this to the economy, and then from there you're able to go ahead and give a value, because the issue with D&D is the only value we have is what the book tells us, and the book tells us, without trying to sound too complaining, wrong. It tells us wrong how the economy would function. And I've built an economy based on the idea that the book is right, and it's stressful, to say the least, because I started realizing I had to fix the cost. If I want the value to stay the same, I have to fix the cost. If I want armor to be this price, I have to adjust the price for everything else. Mm-hmm. The only thing that makes sense is that candles are 1 or 2 copper a piece for a bundle of 10. That is the only thing that makes sense to me in the economy book, in the freaking purchasing book. Mm-hmm. But God, it's something I would have to sit here for hours explaining, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sorry, Norman. I'm stressing out thinking about it.
So again, I guess my perspective on the D&D economy in the book is a little bit different in that, again, as we said, like I don't think it's broken if it doesn't interfere with gameplay. And for the most part, again, most players, in my experience, aren't going to be bothered by most of it. Now, again, as we said before, the GM is a player too, and if it's driving the GM nuts, then you might need to make some changes in order to make something make it acceptable to you to play in. But for the most part, it's only when it shows up in game, because again, the real secret, right? If you want the real secret to the D&D economy, right? Here's the real secret to the D&D economy. There's only like 4 to 6 people in the whole universe. The only actual people are the human beings sitting at the table. That's the actual secret. All the other people are make-believe people, like corporations. And so I know I'm opening a can of worms by making that joke.
I agree with you, but woof.
But so setting aside that thing that I just did, so the economy doesn't necessarily have to make sense to the NPCs, right? The NPCs are part of the world that you're building here, and so if the players aren't engaged in these exchanges, they don't necessarily need to make sense. And for the most part, again, based on my experience, 10 copper makes a silver, 10 silver makes a gold, 10 gold makes a platinum. That sort of thing is designed that way specifically because the players don't want to have to do more math than necessary. That's all it is. Now, you could make that make sense in a physical sense simply because you could say, well, how big are the coins? Right? You could talk about how big are the coins. You could talk about how, you know, maybe you live in this magical world where the ratio of production happens to produce, you know, values in terms of weight that come out in these tens. Historically, in the real world, same weight of silver and gold would historically come out to, it depends on when and where, but anywhere in, like, you know, 12 to 1 to 16 to 1, and usually not whole numbers, which is what historically caused problems in the United States, is that you would have the official trade of silver to gold have like a nice round, say 16 to 1, but in reality it was a 15 and a half. And that 0.5 discrepancy essentially ruined the ability of the US to have coins that are both gold and silver. And in fact, historically, there are places that have had coins of multiple metal value, and they sort of used a multi-metal standard. But a lot of times they don't last very long, because if you try to set this official number, well, any changes to the nature of mining, it messes this process up. If you're doing a story in which, you know, your players are in a mining town and that is part of the adventure, you can really, again, you can build a campaign with that. You can build a story with that. If your players aren't in the mining town, though, do they want to know about that? Like, is that part of their gameplay experience that they're going for? My experience is usually not, because I've offered them the chance to live in places with this, and they're like, no, we're gonna go over here and fight a mind flayer or something, you know, whatever.
I completely agree, because I will admit that I overthink in my head, and it'll be an intrusive thought. It'll start off, this doesn't make sense, and it turns into the rabbit hole of me creating a small business venture, and my DM looking at me like, why would you do this to yourself? You work 60 hours a week, and what little time you have you should spend sleeping. No, I have to know how a fantasy bar functions. I have to be able to feed little Timmy. Who's little Timmy? He's the bartender's son. I never introduced little Timmy. It was an allegory and it ran out of place, so here we are.
So I'm with you, and my tendency is very similar. I will say that from having done enough of the econ and all of that textbook stuff that, you know, again, we talked before about you tried to figure out some of this with the econ for dummies, and it immediately was clear that it was going to be completely useless to you, because it's designed to do. It's designed to help someone who is trying to pass a class get through a test.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it's designed to do. It's not a
bad.
design.
Let me clarify. Econ for Dummies is not a bad econ book. It just was not applicable to what we were discussing today. The first 5 chapters were. Everything after that was the failed American education system yelling at me about how I need to go back to college.
Well, and again, like the purpose of that book is to help someone who's struggling pass a test. And it's a great resource for that kind of thing. But I emphasize that because that, I think, illustrates the point I'm making here, which is that whatever economics you put into your game is going to be an economic model. It's not going to be everything. And whenever we build an economic model, we always, I tell my students in my intro class, I say, look, our goal with building a model is to throw away as much reality as we can get away with. So that all we have left is the stuff that answers our question. So it always comes down to, right, you always want to start by saying, what is my actual question? What is the actual thing that I want to know? What is the thing that I want in the case of D&D? What is the gameplay function that this is going to satisfy? I will put in all of the pieces I need to model that, and the rest of it is intentionally like fuzzy in the background. It's the actors in the background saying watermelon, watermelon to each other. It's designed to be something that doesn't stand up to scrutiny because it's not there to be scrutinized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then if the focus shifts to scrutinize it, then you do what we all do as game masters, and you immediately start laying track in front of a moving train and say, no, that totally made sense the whole time.
Yeah. I completely agree, and I love this conversation. An example of me being derailed was me being on 2 hours sleep the past 2 days and then trying to DM a session. And I had talked about this really rich guy who was going around kind of screwing people over. And they were like, how long has he been screwing people over? Oh, about 10 years. We'll say 10 years. And they were like, well, how old is he? He's 45. Oh, okay. How much does he pay his guards? And I'm like, where are you going with this? They're skilled workers. He pays them 2 copper a day. Has he been paying them 2 copper a day every day? And I realized I had just had a discussion with this guy before the session started about inflation. And so he used the idea of inflation and how he's been paying you 2 copper every day for 10 years. And what about the cost of living? Has that gone up? And I was like, technically it would have to. Well, I'm going to talk to his guards. I'm going to bribe his guards by offering them more money to screw him over. And it turned into a game mechanic. And my own player had to hold my hand through it because, again, 2 hours of sleep in 2 days. But, like you said, if they want it, give it. There was no intent about inflation in this campaign. And suddenly it became the core mechanic for overthrowing a dictator.
Yes!
While we're on the subject, dear listeners,
VJ, you're so patient with our antics. We're just...
Listen, I brought you on here knowing exactly who you were as people for this very reason. Dear listeners, I like to think that as the host here, I am in the seat. I am your perspective into this. So, and like the things I'm asking might be things that are coming into your head because you're terrible at math and economics and definitions of things like I am. So I want you to know that me listening to, inflation, I was like, my brain's not wrapping around inflation in DnD. So if the two of you would like to expand, like, what does that mean for an economy in the game? Inflation. How does it get there? What's it look like? Like what is happening here? Because I cannot conceptualize how inflation is used. Like, both of you.
I'm surely going to have a needlessly technical explanation. So let's start with Aaron, I think.
Okay, so the way that I treat it is that the way I had to treat it in that moment was, the world that we're looking at is the current world. So the current cost of living for a skilled worker, or the pay that they're making for a skilled worker, is 2 silver. But maybe that was the value that they're being paid. But if they've always been paid 2 silver, you either have a super balanced economy, which, great, again, the fantasy, or you have to talk about fluctuation. And that means that even though let's get real. The average worker in America is making $12.50. That was a number I'd looked up a few weeks ago. I don't know if that's changed or anything, but changed in a few weeks. But the average worker makes anywhere between $12.50 to $13 an hour. Okay. Here's the thing. That's the number this year, and that's the number back in 2015. Okay, we've all been making the same amount of money going on 10 years, okay? But the big issue now is that the cost of living is going up, okay? You apply that to the world of D&D, and again, this was a makeshift thing where my player threw a curveball at me, and you start laying those train tracks. And so what ends up happening is, okay, well, yeah, I admitted that they've been paid 2 silver a day every day for 10 years. Obviously, the cost of living would go up, right? You know, bread is... Okay, this is gonna get a little bit technical. Bread and milk are sold at a loss in most places in the US. Why? Because if you go and buy bread and milk, those are the things you buy every day, and they'll build a loyal service. You'll constantly go to Walmart or HEB or your constant local store, and then you'll buy the more expensive things, like your car oil or your battery or your couch. You start buying the more refined things, and they sell at a loss for smaller things to get bigger pay. So the cost of milk and water and bread might not have gone up, and this is the thought process I went through, but obviously the cost of an apartment or a house would. And most of these people rent to own, or they own something and they have to pay for it on a regular basis. So in my head, when it comes to how inflation works, simply you admit the cost goes up, and if your players want to get more into it, like Norman said, if they want to get into it, you can get into it. But it's the idea that the cost of living goes up, even in a fantasy world, which means that what you're getting paid isn't enough. And that was all that the player needed. That was all that the player needed, because that's all inflation is. It's the increasing costs of items over time due to the very arbitrary, very, very detailed, weird world of people applying value to items. Like, I'm trying not to get too technical because that's Norman's book. And again, I'm a jack of all trades who research shit just so I throw it in a game. Statistics. I hated statistics in school until I started applying that the 6-sided die is a 3.5 average damage. And that's how I balance. Hints to everyone who wants to balance their world for weapons and homebrew items: just look at the balance of how much they heal or how much they damage on average. Pick a bunch of dice, average it out, and that'll tell you how much it should cost, so on and so forth. It's so much easier to balance it based on how much it heals or damage. Just go with that. Flavor text is flavor text. Everything else is numbers.
Norman, if you would,
I would
come in
agree
with your...
You've also accurately described most of economics, right? The flavor text is flavor text, and then the rest is all numbers. So if I'm thinking about inflation in a game, and for an economist, right, there's an important distinction when we're talking about, right? When we're talking about inflation, we're talking about prices. What's happening to prices? And you can have what an economist would call a relative price change. That's our example of the, iron has become scarce, so it's gotten more expensive. Everything else hasn't necessarily gotten more expensive. It's just that iron has gotten more expensive relative to all the other things that you could buy.
Gas prices.
So, for example, clothing might still be, whatever it is, but you have to give up a lot more clothing that you could have bought if you really want to buy that sword. Right? Those are again, getting real, which is an economist joke, because, of course, real to an economist means we've adjusted it for inflation. And so we're really looking at, what do you have to give up in order to get a thing? That's what we're thinking about when we think about the relative prices. We put these numbers on them in terms of gold, or in terms of US dollars, or in terms of euros, or whatever it is. But the point of it is, right, how much of other things are you giving up by buying this one? And that's where the story comes from in our example of, there's a shortage of iron, that supply is significantly reduced, so that price goes up. If people want to have, if they want to have iron pins for their wagon wheels, if they want to have a sword, if they want to have plate armor, you're going to have to give up a lot more other things that you could have instead. That's the relative price. Inflation is this very weird thing, right? The simplest way to do inflation in just bog standard D&D take all those prices in the player's handbook, add a 0 to all of them. Just every single one of them gets the same 0 added at the end. Boom, you've inflated the economy. And the thing is that if you have just straight up inflation, it doesn't change anything because none of the relative prices have changed, including, right, we're adding a 0 to the price of milk, we're adding a 0 to the price of bread, we're adding a 0 to the price of an in-stay, we're adding a 0 to the price of a skilled and unskilled laborer's daily wage, right? Inflation just means the number went up. The numbers of everything have gone up. And it's actually a weird thing that that's possible. And economists have done tons of work to try and understand, right? How is it possible that all of the numbers could go up? We understand pretty well why one number would go up and another number might go down, right? One price would go up, another price would go down. That we can make a lot of sense of. It's a weird thing, and it's actually historically not all that common for the prices of everything to be going up. Now, the problem comes in, again, in that when the price of everything goes up, it doesn't all go up by the same rate, first of all. And that's the problem that Aaron is pointing out, is that when you have inflation, you tend to have these big changes in relative price as well. The price of the things that you buy, the price of housing may go up much faster than the wage. And that's a huge social problem. And that's a thing that happens because these aren't all happening magically at once. We're not actually writing a 0 on everything. Everything has this inflationary pressure, but it's going up, it's like a bubbling tub of water, right? It's not all going up at the same rate at the same place. The wage may go up faster than housing for a little bit, but it won't keep doing that. It's going to bounce around. Another problem that you tend to get with inflation is that, and this is more common in a modern economy, but you would have this if you have, for example, a long-term trade, if you have lots of farmers, right? Farmers live their lives by the cycle of planting and harvesting and then selling what they've got. And it's a very risky life if you only get paid once a year. Right? That is a rough life. And actually, a lot of modern finance originates from farming because the farmers were trying to come up with a way to get paid incrementally over the year for stuff that they're going to sell. Because otherwise, they just have to borrow a bunch of money at the beginning of the planting season and then pay it back and hope they have enough to last them through the next year from one harvest, right? It's a very rough way to live. They invented financial instruments to help smooth that out. But that means you write down the numbers in advance.
You're predicting the economy.
You're predicting the economy. You're predicting the level of those prices. So if all those zeros show up, but they didn't show up on your contracts, somebody's getting screwed over. Somebody's getting screwed over.
Who's getting screwed over in that case between the farmers and the getting paid?
Well, this is a great point. If, for example, if you're the farmer who's borrowing a bunch of money, and then there's this massive inflation that no one saw coming, right? The heroes come in, they bring in thousands of gold, they buy everything, they drive up the price of everything, everyone adds a 0 to everything except your contract. Then if you borrowed money, you are now paying back the same number of gold pieces, the same number of dollars, but you're going to be selling your wheat and your corn for a lot more gold pieces than you thought.
So the farmer is coming out on top for that.
The farmer comes out on top in that case. But suppose the farmer is expecting the party to come in with a bunch of gold from the dungeon, and they're expecting prices to go up, so they borrow money expecting that price increase.
It doesn't
A
happen.
dragon kills the party. They don't show up. They bring nothing in. That essentially means that prices aren't going to go up as much as they expected, but they're still going to owe the money that they borrowed and wrote down. That farmer is toast. That farmer's life has just been ruined.
Mm-hmm.
And these are things. I mean, I'm really describing like 19th century America, by the way. Like this is not this is not like fiction. This is real life. But it's something that, again, it's a source of drama that you can bring into the game if that's the kind of experience that your players want to have. If that's the kind of problem you want them to solve.
First thing I want to point out is the party gets killed and this affects this farmer. You simply just wrote your second character as being influenced by the death of the party.
My life was ruined by their death.
So I am now an adventurer myself to pay my debt. Oh God, that feels a little too
I think that's like in the first chapter of the Eberron book. It's like, no, you owe someone money. Who do you owe money to?
Yeah.
Yep, that's one of the things.
I will say, my brain just left me for a split second, but gosh darn it, what was I going to say? Oh no, I made a joke and now it's made me suffer. Okay. Again, economy, inflation. I'm running through my head again. God damn it. Oh, I just lost my train of thought. Fuck.
Happens all the time.
Yeah. Damn it. I had something important to add, I'm sure. Fuck. This is not
why
a day
don't I
for
tell a story while you think about it and
go for it.
Because I do want to throw this in there that I will say that the nature of the economy and sort of what kind of economic conflicts show up. One thing that we as GMs, I think, need to be prepared for is that you can throw something in thinking it's an afterthought or thinking that it's set dressing. You're not going to go into it very much, and you can be surprised what your players latch on to. My players right now, I've had them in a city. They're like famous heroes at this point. They're like 11th level. They're famous heroes from far off, and they've sailed to this other city where things work a little bit differently, and they've been staying in the Styes. And it's the poor part of town, and then there's the upper city where everything kind of works, but they've been in, basically, I just introduced, I was like, yeah, this city is a lot like your city, except there's this massive income inequality. Primarily as set dressing and sort of setting the scene. And my players are ready to burn this whole city down. They're like gonna storm the upper city and be like, we are going to overthrow the bourgeoisie. We are going to tear down their towers. I was like, oh, okay, I don't have notes for this, but if that's the direction you want to take it. And really all it was, I said, some people have definitely benefited. I basically said, this is an alchemist city, and all of the alchemists are in this one area, and everyone who lives around that area, it's all poor and it's all gross, and nature has been disrupted. Terrible things. And then there's the upper city that's up on the cliffs, and they don't have any of these problems. And it was just this I thought, very simple sort of economic story to set a really evocative scene. And my players they're like, forget all of the things we came here to do. We are going to take over this whole city. And they still haven't decided whether they're going to just destroy the city or take it over or just try to help people. So just as an illustration of how this comes out in play.
I want to say great minds think alike because I was on a writing project called Fight to the Top. That was essentially the premise that like you have like this spiraling city where the bottom rung of people are dealing with like sickness and disease and waste and stuff. You have automatons and soldiers that are like oppressing the people, and then the adventurers show up and help the people's rebellion, and they try to take over the city in general. So like excellent way to tie in the economics of things. Aaron, did you remember what you were going to say?
I did, and it actually ties into this as well. Players, well, we talked about the idea of inflation and why it happens, and I have a theory, and it's not a well thought out theory. It's literally popped in my head while we were talking. Capitalism versus socialism, and I know I just said the bad word in America, because there are going to be people who look at me and say socialism is bad because Stalin, and I'm going to look at you and go, Stalin wasn't a socialist. He was a capitalist at heart. But the idea of capitalism is that we need to make more money every year. Okay, we need to tag on that extra 10%. Okay, and when you get into a world where you have to keep making more money, that creates a weird, like, just growing up paycheck to paycheck as a kid, it created a weird feedback loop. You need more money to cover the cost of these things, but the cost of these things need to increase to make up for the fact that you're making more money. Or else the norm changes. So when you deal with that, and I've noticed my players, your players want to build this like socially equal world. They feel like they've done so in their town, and when they see another town not doing that, they're like, fuck you guys and you rich SOBs. I in real life am at best poor man, and you in the fantasy world are filthy fucking rich, and despite the fact I'm supposed to separate reality from fantasy, I'm going to take out all my aggressions on these poor alchemists who probably had a skill that got them to where they were. Because that's another thing. The idea of a skilled worker versus unskilled, but that's a whole nother thing. In fantasy, because again, the fantasy of fantasy is creating a perfect world, most people create a socialist type world where everyone who works gets paid enough to survive. Okay. And I know that there are going to be exceptions to this, but in reality, most of what we do in D&D is the idea that we can have excess and we come out good on the other side. We can go out on an adventure, defeat a dragon, get their entire horde, and then build a small city around what was originally our little hut. And that's another way to show economy in D&D, is describe what changes about the world around you. Okay, your players want to get a hideout of their own, so they start off in the bottom of a bar where they keep meeting. It's a local bar that they keep meeting. Then they own the bar. Okay, now they're running the bar themselves, and you get a fun little one-shots where, oh, the rogue now has to actually do taxes, and you guys have now been evading taxes for the whole year that you've been doing it. You can do runarounds with that, but then they go from owning the bar to owning the building the bar's in. You know, these are small ways of showing economic change that mean everything to your players, but to you are 2 or 3 sentences. You now own the bar. What do you want to do with it? You now have 5 workers under you. Who are they? You know, and what do they enjoy? Because economy is people, it's the reactions to things as well. But the thing about D&D is that your economy is also going to be represented by what kind of system you put in. Is it a capitalist system where you're trying to make more and more money all the time? Is it a system where you get what you need and get rid of everything else? You constantly just meet your bare minimum, and that's all you want to do, or that's all you can do? Or are you a part of a system where in which you're struggling constantly to get to the top? And that's more so the vibe of the world, which translates to economy. You know, Dark Souls is completely different to Mario, okay? That man gets coins on a regular basis, and they mean nothing other than point value. But in Dark Souls, souls or essence get jacked from you by a dude with a pitchfork and a bad temper on a regular basis. Not even counting the dragon that burns a bridge because he sees one guy crossing it. But, you know, just the idea that the vibe of your world ties into the economy and the system you're running, reflects why you might have inflation. And I know we're kind of stepping away from inflation, but that would reflect why you might have inflation or something along those lines. Do you have a utopia? Do you have, and again, the idea of utopia is different than the idea of like a socialist or a capitalist society. That is a category, and then the subcategory would be capitalism. So a utopian capitalist society, you know, what does that look like for your players? Is it just making enough money to get on by and every year and it not really going into the idea of inflation? But I feel like in my head, the idea of inflation is a subsidiary of capitalism for some reason. I feel like that's it. Again, it's just a shotgun thing, but I don't have the college degree or teach classes, so sorry, that was what I was thinking, and I'm sorry that was such a train of thought, wrecked and all.
No worries. Listen, I'll say it again. I know who both of you are. I brought you on here for a reason. So during the break, I asked like, hey, if we had a little bit more time to talk more. And then I also mentioned, hey, I would like us to talk about the different like levels, like what to base an economy off of if you're trying to build something up from scratch, like the price of bread or like how much people make and that kind of thing. But I do think that in order to do that part of the conversation justice, including with magic items, we need more time than we should go over today. So I think we're going to have to say we'll have a part 2 to get that answered. And obviously, do not feel like y'all have to commit to this in this moment. I would love if, like, when we do the part 2, I want to have something functional and working as an economy to use for my players and to let other people use by the time we do part 2, and would love to dissect it with y'all. If we could, like, part 2, we start off talking about, oh, hey, what would you base your stuff on? And then get to an example of, oh, hey, this is what I based it on. This is how it's working and whatnot. And then we could like tear it down, build it up from there. So people have like a working thing.
I am down for that, but that is going to be highly individualized and it has to be very flexible, because again, it's whether or not your players even care for that.
Yeah, fair. Totally understand that. And this will be like down the line. I'm not saying, hey, let's schedule for next month. Absolutely not. But on the note, final thoughts from both of you before we wrap up, and I ask you to plug yourself one more time. Norman and then Aaron.
So I guess final thoughts are that, again, at the end of the day, you can build a model economy for any purpose. So you should start with, what is it that I want in this game? What is it that we at this table want in this game? What kind of things do we want to explore? What kind of drama do we want to create? What sort of conflicts and characters and things do we want to introduce? And build an economy that facilitates that. And if you start from that mindset, I think it also becomes a lot easier to take the sometimes contradictory, very messy bits that again, DnD or any TTRPG product gives you, and build something that will work and be engaging at your own table.
For me, the final thoughts are, 1, economy is simple but messy because people are messy. It's not that the economy itself is weird, it's people. 2, people have different values. Okay, so things are going to be worth different to them. And with that, be flexible with your players. If a player decides that they want to sell the monster parts, let them. Okay? Let them even name their own prices, because in reality, he's going to sell it, or she's going to sell it, or they're going to sell it for what they believe it's worth. And then you can introduce the idea that they've been got, or they've been overpricing their stuff. And that creates an interaction. D&D and economy are both action and reaction. to everything. Okay? That is how the world works, and improv / tabletops are no different.
Okay, well, thank you both of you for being here. I appreciate the time and can't wait to talk about it some more. Aaron, where can people find you?
People can find me on TikTok at MorphyTime, and soon, hopefully, also on Twitch and YouTube, as I am currently working on some things to expand my content, because TikTok keeps shadow banning me for reasons they won't tell me.
Fucking TikTok. Norman?
People can find me on TikTok or Twitter at Metadoxy.
And there will be links to where you can find both of these fine individuals in the show notes. And yeah, thanks so much for being here, y'all. I will see you next week. And thanks again, both of you.
Metadoxy is such a fucking metal name. I love it.